Oh man, it was a day. Let me tell you, this is what I'm talking about. This is the shit that people got to go through sometimes. It's really, really important that people have the experience of getting dragged through the mud. Like really having to hound through it. And one of the biggest things that I think is extremely important for people to go through in any program, regardless of how good you are, how good you want to be, how good you think you are, is that instantaneous block, that first obstacle of immediate burnout. And this is not passion-wise. It's not the mental side of things, although it definitely can drain that. It's that kind of day where it's going to be tough. You know that you put in so much yesterday that today's bound to be weaker, yet you push through it anyway. If you guys saw yesterday, started the new program, newest high. I was on something yesterday. Let me tell you, I was through the roof yesterday. And those days are always typically a little pretense to slowing down a little bit. You want to be peaked on certain days and take advantage of it while you got it, because it's not going to last. Because I could have gone easier yesterday, sure, and been like, okay, surely I'm not going to be tired the next day, but you don't know that. Hindsight is such a bitch in this sport, because every time you do something, you can tell yourself, well, if I knew it was going to be like that, then I would have changed it in the first place. But that's the whole point of a program, running its course, really adapting it to yourself, because your body is not going to be able to adhere to it the exact same every single day. Every day you grow and show up to the gym and commit to another session, you become a different person. I don't care how little, I don't care what the change is. You are never mentally, physically confident, passion-wise, going to be the exact same person every single day. That's why I do my little rating at the end. It is a part of the process to have the bursts of energy come in waves, and sometimes those waves can last days, weeks, months. I've had some really great training sessions in the past, especially when I was a lot more invincible without any injuries under my belt. But for me, I got to accept that blockage. I got to really run straight through it. Because let me tell you, when I got through the clean and jerk complex alone dried me out. I was burnt through and through. At pretty decently lightweight. I started off with doing a stand to the hip, a clean deadlift, doing one of my favorite, the Klov pause at the knee on the way down, and that's just a super long, 3 to 5 second pause before jumping back into the full clean from the knee, and then split jerk plus push press. This was my first bench day on the new program, mixed with the clean and jerk stuff. So I really wanted to make sure I hounded my shoulders a little bit and get that conditioning thorough. Because these days are not meant to be focused around weight anymore at all. It never truly is. But when you go percentage based off of a progressive overload, it's inevitable that your expectations or standards are going to make it to where you feel like you have to hit a certain number. And the moment I hit 225, I knew, I was like, okay, well, if I jump to 255 right now, it's either going to be all or nothing, I'm going to miss, or I maybe have room for one more working set. And remember, the goal is to have 3 working sets beyond your first strenuous warm-up, And so I could already tell. And again, the limiting factor was the push press. That's the whole point of today's workout. I wanted to have just enough conditioning to really force the technique, have a good whip under the bar, get some good speed, especially with how sore I am from all the squatting yesterday, because I did a fuck ton of low body yesterday with snatch, overhead squat, and back squat paired together. And so being able to move that fast and that solid under the barbell, regardless of my core and my quads being burnt, is great. However, when it comes to that final grind set, the one that you aren't too sure about, but know you at least got the attempt for, got the 255, the moment I caught the split jerk, I'm not great at re-racking from the front. I'm sure I could build up to it if I trained it enough, but I don't train it enough to want to change how I do it just yet. And I was just so burnt out that I knew immediately that it was going to come to either my core strength being too little or my shoulder strength being too little. But that was the point. I put in enough working sets to have gotten that good intensity in, that good conditioning, that good technique, and then being able to still push through to a all or nothing set without the same risk of injury. That's the whole point. But like I said, that one took me out. I could already feel that my core was pretty obliterated. Yesterday, because I felt so good and so hyped about the new program, I'm bound to have to make some sacrifices today comparatively. But again, this is technique, conditioning, volume. It does not matter how heavy I go. It matters that I put in the intensity required to have great technique, great explosiveness, and great consistency throughout the reps. And so on front squat, you would imagine with me being able to do 385 pretty confidently that I would do a warm-up set at 275 for 6 and then move up to 305. Not today. Not today, brother. And it's not a matter of I was too weak, because it's not that. I genuinely believe that when it comes to my quads, my back, my shoulder, honestly, most of my body was fully ready. But your CNS is a dangerous thing, because you can physically, muscular-wise, be fully confident, fully sure of yourself. But if the CNS conditioning and confidence is not there, you cannot overdo it, because that taints the rest of your week's worth of sessions that you have to hit. These are not the peak days. These are the conditioning days. I will peak at the later half of the week. So right now, put the ego away. Make a start. We're rebuilding a new standard to build upon so that I can make more progress along the way. Because this is not the first month I'm going to run this program. So, 255, I was immediately burned out. Not because I was weak picking up the bar by any means. It felt explosive. You'll see how fast it is. It was blowing through it. But my core and my CNS was in shambles. I was shaking. But regardless of my CNS, it was light enough to where I could still squat it how I wanted to without losing the technique along the way. That's the biggest thing. Because if I go to the weight that I can do strength-wise, technique-wise, I will suffer. And it is an accessory lift. The front squat is not meant for maxing out on my program. It is meant for conditioning and accessorizing the clean and jerk. So, at the very least, got to build up to 285. Still a decently heavy weight for a set of 6. I'm not unhappy about that whatsoever. It was a good grind. And my shoulders and my core were still burning up, like breaking down by the last set. I had so little energy, regardless of my mental, regardless of my wit and my passion, that I had to give in to the weight a little bit and allow the technique to shine through first, so that next time I can obliterate it, Because who knows? I got sets of 4 next week. I'll probably start at 295 for whatever warm-up for a set of 4, and then be able to build up to beyond 315. That's awesome. That's still great, but I need the conditioning first. And like how with squats, you're limited by your low back and core first, every squat movement is not only built upon and reliant on, but also limited by your CNS, the stability in your core itself, your nerves, everything from the most inner part of your muscles connected straight to your spine have to be locked in to hit that heavy weight. So this is the step that I have to allow myself to take, regardless of what I want to do, because it's what I have to do in order to hit next week's heavier step. What the hell are we talking about? Right, the instantaneous burnout. Because you'd imagine, after this, I'm like, okay, now, I typically don't do 3 exercises on the second day in a row. Now I have to do bench press after doing full clean and jerk work. So I'm spent. Physically, CNS-wise, I'm spent. I've ran out of juice. My brain is starting to melt a little bit, but it doesn't matter. Because this is why, on these technique days, it's not just because it's a technique day that I do a variation of bench press instead of normal bench volume. It's because it's what gets me excited again at the end of a workout when I have nothing left to put into it when it comes to physical confidence, So today, I figured what best to work on than what I've been struggling with the most on bench, and that being having the shoulder and elbow and wrist stability into the bottom position So I did the slowest tempo possible going down into the descent, but not pausing on my chest. And some may think like, oh, well, you'll have better gains if you just pause out at the bottom since you're moving at that tempo anyway. But for me, I want to get the stability going into the bottom position, but still have the explosiveness off my chest without my elbows winging out, you know? Because that was the biggest thing where I'm on all the heavyweight last program, my elbows kept winging, and it made the weight shift too much to where I couldn't grind through it. So this is making it to where I have the focus on the stability, and then I can force everything through the explosion at the very end of it. One way or another, went beautifully. Because I got re-excited. It's not something I've done in a while. I pick complexes that I either A, haven't done in a while, or B, get me the most excited because I suck at them. Because it gets, it's something that I have, again, the ambiguity of it all, the mystery of how well I'll do is what drives me so far sometimes. It gets me so amped up. And I really pulled through. Because, again, when it comes to a quote-unquote slowest tempo, depending on the weight, obviously at the barbell, I'm not going to go as slow as humanly possible because that would just burn me out way too quick. But at the heavier sets, there's no point in going heavier than what I ego want to, because, I could have gone up to 275 as my last warm-up and then moved up to 305 in the long term. But with slowest tempo, the moment you start feeling that burn, that pump in your chest and your shoulders, you can kind of just chill out at those weights that immediately start that little burn, that little pump. Because if you feel like you could go heavier, it's not weight you need to add on, it's tempo you need to slow down. And so when I did 265, that's where I was like, okay, I'm kind of burning through this. It's kind of not that hard. 275, I was like, let's really lock in some good tempo. Got some good tempo, really slowed it down to what would make me grind harder than what I was doing on the previous sets. But then 285, it's scorched earth. You got nothing left to lose now. So you really got to allow yourself to live in that burn. Even more, live in that burnout. Because especially on that last set that I've earned, mentally you're going to want to just give it to yourself. You're like, oh, well, the last one was easy, so surely this one's going to go just as fine. But you have to treat it just as important, if not more important, to actually have that same capability that you expect yourself to have. So I really locked it in. 285. Got to really switch on the brain. Got one of my favorite homies in there. I love how he spots. He's so good to me. That man makes me work. So I knew he was going to have my back no matter what funky shit I was going to do. And so to me, it is just, how much can I force myself to slow down every single rep? Because obviously I'm doing triples on this variation this week. So the first 2 reps are not going to be the slowest, even though I have the most physical confidence on those first 2, because I won't know how much I have left until that last rep. And I must hit the triple. It's a technique day. There is no room for failure, especially when I started doing lighter weights. So head the best tempos on that last set for sure for the first 2 reps. But the moment I hit that, I'm like, that 3rd rep, it may not look as slow, it may not even be as slow, but mentally and physically, I know I sat through that burn longer than any other rep. And it blew off my chest. It exploded the best I could have hoped for. But I'm telling you, when my shoulders and my triceps were getting numb at that point just from holding it still, the side of my hand was cramping. It was holding there so long. That's what I want. That little bit of continuous effort, regardless of how little energy I have. It's a good and normal thing to hit that initial block of burnout. It's going to happen. It may not be on your 2nd day. It may not be on your 3rd day. But I'm telling you, after you get used to whatever new program you're the most hyped for, or you've put in a super hard amount of effort, got really excited one day, you could come in tomorrow and be a quarter of the confidence you had the day before. But it doesn't matter. It does not matter. It's the will to give yourself the intensity required to do just as good regardless of how heavy it is. Plus, it's volume week, so it really doesn't matter. This is getting my recovery back up, getting my conditioning, my CNS prepped, so that next week I can really go ham, really go balls to the walls before my peak week. Because this is probably going to be the last full program I run before I compete in August. I might have I'll probably have room to do half of another program before that meet, and then I'll just treat the meet like my peak week, I'll do some deload work, and then by the time I get to the actual comp day, I'll go hard as I want, you know? So give yourself that room of credibility, that room of just being okay with not going as heavy, not going as hype, you know? Because hype and passion will take you a long way. I know it. I live by it. But on the days where the brain wants to shut off before you even get a chance to pick up the weight, you have to lock it back in. Because the effort you put on days like that triumphs way further long term over the days where you're most hyped. Because it is easy to lift on days where you have the biggest confidence, the most hype, and the most passion. It is hard as fuck to lift just as good, regardless of your failures. Because I failed my 255 attempt. I just didn't have that grind for it. But I'm not mad at all because I gave it that best effort. I knew there was nothing left, but I still pushed to the highest availability that I gave myself per my prerequisites for this program. I earned that weight, so I earned the attempt. And the rest of the lift still looked really good. So you have to give yourself that credit where credit is due and be happy that you could push that hard on such a shitty day, energy-wise, so that next time when you come in, whether it's the next day or the next week, you will have it in you. That opportunity for peak will come. Physically, not great. Definitely was struggling for sure. But it still all looked really good. Everything was still extremely explosive. Everything was really good technique. I can't be upset about any of the lifts I did at all today. But physically, I was definitely feeling like, oh, shit. I'll give it a solid 8.3. It was a good day. Nothing insane, but a good day. I'm very happy with the effort I put in. It's what I got to do, you know? But mentally, sitting at a 8.7. Good bit higher, but it's just that mental was definitely carrying me toward the end. You got to allow yourself to pick yourself back up no matter what. Because if you're just physically in the dumps and not mentally, you got to turn that brain on. Because your mental can carry your physical so much further than your physical can carry your mental. Every time. Thanks for hearing me out. As per usual. Let me know how those lives and lists been going. I love hearing about it. And I will be back tomorrow for my true recovery day of the first half of the technique conditioning week, part of this first block. Tomorrow will just be a snatch complex and a clean and jerk complex, but both will be power movements. So they're a bit easier. Can't go as heavy. And I'll really make sure to hound in the lockouts, having the priority be core stability and joint stability so that when I take my rest day and come back, I can max out my triples as best I can. And those days I'll work more with solid, strict warm-ups rather than having the several working sets because it's supposed to be an all-out day. One way or another, I will be back as always. You know what's up. I love you guys. I'll see you later. Bye.